stuff.
All right, good morning, everybody. Y'all, that was weak. I'm gonna do it one more time. Good morning, everybody. That was better. Thank you, thank you. Welcome to our second full task force meeting. It feels like it should be the third, but I think we had a weather event in there somewhere. So thank you all for being here this morning. We are a little thin, but I think that we have some folks who had some uncancelable conflicts. And so we are glad to have you all here with us today. And thank you for everyone who's online viewing with us. I also want to thank, I believe that we have a class here with us today. Class full? All right, tell us about that, Michelle.
So everybody raise your hand. This is our future.
Can you click the mic so that they're green so we can hear, people online can hear?
Yep. So this is our future in the back. I am a professor, one of my many hats at NC State University School of Social Work. And this is a foundation year. They are in their first year of a graduate program to be social workers.
Awesome.
And many of you have interns where you are working, and later, hopefully, you can meet some of them.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle. Well, welcome everybody. We're glad that you're here to see government at work. So there we go. I think that we've got a lot of really good work to do here today. We're going to look at our report that is due to the governor by the end of this month, and then talk about the path forward. Really excited for the work that we're going to do today, but we are going to try to keep us rolling and keep us on time in acknowledgement of everybody's busy schedules. So please, if you have questions, don't hesitate to speak up, but we are going to keep us on a tight schedule. And so with that, I will read our ethics reminder as a public body. In accordance with General Statute 138A-35 and other provisions of the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every task force member to avoid both conflicts of interest and appearances of conflict. Does any member have a known conflict of interest or appearance of a conflict with respect to any matters coming before the task force today? Seeing none, we will move forward. All right. Director Scott?
Before we get started, we do also want to just acknowledge that since our last meeting, we've added 2 additional members to our task force to completely now fill our membership. And one of them is here with us today, Kendall Taylor. So just want to take a minute to acknowledge. And if you just want to introduce yourself briefly to the group.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here, especially from perspectives, which I think is what allowed me to have an opportunity at this table. Just want to bring a different lens. My name is Dr. Kendall Taylor. I'm the CEO and founder of Salute First Academy of Men. We started in the prisons about 12 years ago, dealing with the behavioral aspects of it. Me being a justice impacted individual, finding success, running several multi-million-dollar companies. I realized I got to be able to show them the breadcrumbs of how to do the same, and we kept hearing this recurring thing. If I would have known this then, I would have known this then. So then we took a shot at the prevention end and started penetrating the school systems. And so in select areas around the country, about 25 schools, we have our E1 program inside of the school day. And through our nonprofit, we provide internships, career pathways, scholarships, enrichment opportunities. So we kind of have a rare leg in the prevention and intervention leg. So again, I'm honored to be here and hope that I can add value.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you so much. All right. So with that, we have a few things we want to discuss today with you all, some updates and some decisions we want to make on things. Like Secretary Dismuke said, we have a draft of our annual report. It should be in your notebook for you. So this is per the statute of the executive order, a report that we are required to provide yearly to the governor. And so we took a pass at drafting this one, considering that we as a task force have just really gotten started and haven't been able to get to our recommendations yet. We just provided a lot of background about what we have been up until this point. So getting the task force up and running, establishing the membership, putting together the work groups, and getting those off the ground. And so that's a lot of the information you'll find in that report. And so we're open to any thoughts or feedback that you all have on that. But again, we know that at this point, not a lot to report, but we're looking forward to jumping into the recommendations soon. So we'll give y'all just a couple minutes to look through that process and let us know if you have any feedback at this time.
And y'all will note we did not print all the big appendices for you, but on the back it notes what appendices will be there, including the membership. And because these are drafts, we will take them back up after the meeting and then we will send out the final draft to everybody.
We'll give y'all about one more minute or so. Looks like just a couple folks are still reviewing. Okay. So do any of our task force members, do you all have feedback for us, questions about the report and the content?
Can I propose a slight change? In the intervention category, the first sentence, it reads, the intervention work group aims to reduce or end gang participation. I think striking the word end, that's a big undertaking to say that we're going to dissolve gang participation finitely. So if it could read, the intervention work group aims to reduce gang participation and promote positive behavioral change.
I think, actually, to your point, Michelle, I think what we meant by that was not end everyone's gang
Right.
participation everywhere, but end people's individual
Lives.
gang participation.
Right.
So how could we get at that and still to reduce or end an individual's gang participation and individuals?
I think we could add individuals or use the word increase maybe gang disassociation. I just think the gang participation may sound to outside readers like our goal is to dissolve gang participation at all.
Oh, goody.
What's up
I
there?
don't know what
It's
we're
all right.
doing here.
He's gonna giant bee.
He will probably get electrocuted pretty soon. So we'll just, there's online, we have a bee in the ceiling, but we're going to monitor that. Hopefully no one's terribly allergic. We'll let you know if he comes out. So reduce gang participation, increase disassociation, and promote positive behavior change. I think that gets at it.
We can figure out how to work that in.
Okay.
Other thoughts or questions about the report?
I think at this point, it's important that we have a structure. I think that we've made a lot of inroads in how we have stood up the task force, how we have stood up the working groups and the path forward. So I think that we have accomplished a lot in figuring out what the path forward looks like. I think I've said this before and may have said this at the first meeting, but I consider this a marathon and not a sprint, right? I mean, we do want to make sure that we have measurable and defined outcomes by the end of our timeline. But I look at this as something that we are going to work on implementing over the years and keep tweaking and keep tracking our metrics and our KPIs and see whether we are making a difference. And then if not, come back to the table together and figure out how to proceed to revise and move forward and that kind of thing. So I think this is a great start in terms of our plan and our timeline for that. I will also just take a moment to say I've had a couple discussions with folks offline, folks in this room, and also others from some of our working groups about kind of understanding the vision of the task force and where we need to be. And I think, we're going to talk about the timeline for sure. And Ciara is going to go through pretty granularly, some of the things in the report. But I wanted to take a minute to say, I think the way that I see this is this task force will come out with a couple of really solid recommendations in each of these spaces that are achievable and sustainable. Right. And we start there. We don't throw spaghetti on the wall and say, give me 50 initiatives and I'm going to try to run them in 50 different counties. Right. What are some achievable and sustainable initiatives that can be scalable to our different communities, whether it's rural, urban, big, small, based on the personality of the communities, and that we can move forward and then measure our success in doing that and gather some metrics and how we have to adjust and pivot. And so to me, coming out with those actual recommendations that we can really then put our force and weight behind, whether that's including possible legislative change or requests for funding, whether it be grant funding or from the General Assembly for partnership there. I think that that's what we want to keep our eye on, right? What are the defined things that we can put our hands on and start doing that we can then measure, that we can then move forward, and that we can come back and pivot. So I think instead of what are the 50 ideas that we could possibly run in every school in North Carolina, right? That's not going to get us where we need to be because we're not going to be able to implement that statewide. And I think that's the goal, implementation statewide and tracking our progress on those things. So I just wanted to kind of level set with that, knowing that I'd had a couple of conversations with folks offline about kind of where are we going and what's the idea and what's the thought process. So anything else on the report before we move to definitions? Oh, we're going to timeline. Yes, the timeline. How about it?
So kind of building on that, we wanted to take a minute to kind of go through the timeline that you all have in the report. On page 8, it has this image that you see on the screen and then a few more details, but this is essentially our way of kind of conceptualizing the plan that we have for the task force and the work that we'll do and how we're seeing of breaking up these phases. And so from October through now, we really saw that as an infrastructure building phase. So really just trying to get the task force and our 3 different work groups off the ground and running, which took a lot. There were a lot of moving pieces, and you all ebbed and flowed with us, which we appreciate. And so during that time, we wanted to make sure not only that we got the people right, but that you all had an opportunity to just make sure that you're level setting, getting a similar baseline understanding on the concepts related to the subjects of the groups that we've put y'all in. And so that's why we assigned y'all that activity where you kind of talk through some questions. We put these focus areas for y'all to dig into and have just really exploratory conversations about to begin with. And so now the next step is for us to move into our recommendation development phase. And so that's really where we see the true work being done of y'all digging in and really taking these pie in the sky ideas and bringing them more to life and providing recommendations that we can figure out how to act on as a task force. And so that will begin today and onward. And we plan to not rush that process. So we'll have at least the next 6 to 8 months to really give y'all time to dig in and put some recommendations together. And then we hope by our November meeting that we'll have those recommendations from all the work groups and be able to then move into the next phase of prioritizing as a task force and figuring out of all of these ideas, where should we start? And then thinking about how to plan for implementation from there. And so that's the last phase that we have on that timeline. And so we believe that by the end of our 2 years, we at least should be able to get through that and make a plan for implementation. But depending on how things go, hopefully we either will be able to begin that or set a good foundation for those next steps after these 2 years.
And I would just add to that, I'll say based on conversations this week with the governor's office, I think he would like to see us combine phases 2 and 3. And so I think that what the report might look like edited would be recommendation development and prioritization that happens concurrently. So perhaps the spring to winter of 26 and then in early 27 starting implementation planning. So we are ready for prime time by the end of 2027. So probably combining those two intermediate phases. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, thoughts, questions? Do we feel like we can do this? Yeah. Good. All right.
All right.
So with that, we'll move to our next conversation on defining gangs.
Great. So, I think that one of the things that you have all done in your work groups is work on some basic kind of common understandings, definitional foundations for the work that you're doing in the individual working groups. But we thought it might be important to think about how we are thinking about gangs as a task force. And so the two things you have in front of you are the federal definition and the state definition. These are mostly derived from the criminal sphere, right, and the prosecutorial sphere where these definitions come from. And those of you that have worked in that space, they will be familiar to you. But I think the question is whether we accept one or both of these definitions as what we believe is the working definition of a gang, or whether we take one of these and add to it some other common understanding that we have. I will note that in these two definitions, they are codified, right? And so, as we probably all know, it takes mountains to change the statutes. And so they probably haven't been updated in quite some time. And so they might be a little outdated to our common understanding of what gangs look like these days. And so I think the question is whether we use a definition that has been codified or whether we as a task force feel like we should expand that in some way. And so take a minute to, I think they're in front of you, you can read them. They're fairly straightforward in terms of what you would expect them to be. But if people have thoughts, we would love to hear those thoughts.
As
I was a part of, building the North Carolina definition not that very long ago. I'm not sure. But I think it still fits what we are seeing in North Carolina. Hybrid landscape, narrowing that definition anymore, adding any more to it is gonna hinder a lot of things in the criminal side of things and prosecution side of. Not a big fan of the federal definition. I would suggest we just leave it.
Um, I have to speak my heart. I don't think, I think like you said, is the juice worth the squeeze trying to change it? I just would like to present something just for consideration that we can just think about as we move forward. That very first said, in order to create an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. Schools that I serve and the prisons that I enter in is typically the opposite. They are created because they are fearful. That's the only thing that stuck out to me is I know when I was running, when I was young, cliques I was running with, it wasn't to impose fear. We were scared. We were scared that we were outnumbered. We were scared that we didn't belong, being picked on, being assaulted. So that's the only thing I would suggest is in our efforts to make sure we deal with the behavioral aspect of why they engage in it. It's usually because of fear, but not to create fear.
And I think that's a really good point. And if you'll notice, that is not in our state definition. And maybe Chuck, since he participated in drafting, can tell us if that was an intentional omission and a choice that we made for the state to not include that for that reason. I don't know.
Very intentional.
Because it's a good point.
Very exalting. The way it is, and being simple, and not the federal definition.
Everything else is valid. Yeah.
So I'm hearing a preference for the state definition. Does anyone have any other thoughts about that? I think that makes sense to me. I think the state definition, we are in North Carolina, and so we're trying to stand up North Carolina initiatives. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Okay, so we will operate with the North Carolina definition, and you guys will see that later on some other things as we try to draft up recommendations and that kind of thing. We will make sure that we are out front in what our definition of a gang is and moving forward and as we draft recommendations. So thank you guys for that. Okay, this is the best run meeting I've ever participated in. We're 15 minutes ahead of schedule, y'all.
Everything is so smooth and easy. We love it. So next on the agenda, you'll see that we'll be going through a series of presentations. These are on different topics that from our previous meeting and discussions throughout the work groups. These are some things that have come up that people either want to learn more about or want to make sure that the entire task force has knowledge and understanding about to inform this recommendation development process. And so we will have, I believe, 3 to 4 different presentations. Our first presentation will be on some essential public health models for violence prevention, and that presentation will be done by Dr. Belinda Rose Young. So just very quickly, I'll give y'all background on Belinda Rose Young. She is the founder and executive director of Liberty Generation, which is a nonprofit that helps communities turn insight into impact. And Dr. Young is a recognized strategist and systems thinker who blends the depth of public health research with the precision of business strategy to design solutions that make violence prevention sustainable. And she has worked on several different violence prevention initiatives and campaigns, including with the United Nations and some universities and programs in our state. And with that, I will pass it to Dr. Young.
Can you hear me okay?
Well, there's people.
Oh,
Yes.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope that we're all caffeinated because I'm a former professor and there will be some activities that we're doing during this time. So if we need to stretch, it's fine. First, I just have to say thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the task force. Yes, it's an honor to be here, but thank you for the good work that you're doing for North Carolina. I don't know why I'm getting a little emotional. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about essential public health models. And the first thing I do want to just ground us in is that violence is a public health problem. While there's no common or same working definition of public health. You'll see variations across the board. The commonality is that we're working for the communal good. We're working to create an environment where people can thrive and be healthy. And that includes not having violence in our community and in our society. So because we have a public health problem, we deserve a public health approach. I know I'm speaking to the choir here with some of these statistics. I didn't realize the screen was going to be so small, so bear with me. But 5 people a day die from firearm injury. That's just deaths. Does include wounds. 5 people a day. This is the most recent statistics that we have in North Carolina. And as of the 2021 YRBS survey, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is the last one that was done in North Carolina, 30% of high school students say that they can access a firearm within an hour's time without any parental or caregiver knowledge. That is where we are right now based upon the latest statistics. So I'm going to introduce you to 2 public health models. The first is a social ecological model, and the second is the public health approach. So with regards to the social ecological model, this is where we get into our activity, right? So please talk back to me, engage. All right, so I'm going to read a scenario for you, and then we'll go through some questions. So each of you all receive a phone call the same day at the same time. And in this call, you are told that 4 young males, roughly between the ages of 14 and 15, were caught spray painting the side of the local Publix. They were caught on a Monday afternoon at 1 p.m., and school is in session. What are some of the questions that come to your mind? You can shout out, you can raise your hand. What comes to mind? Who caught them? Okay. Where are their parents? Why are they not in school? What else? The structure of the home. Great. I think I heard something. Does the school know they're missing? Hopefully they do. That's a good question. Does anyone care? I heard some other things. What they spray paint. Ooh, that's a good question. I didn't think about that. Yeah. Was something else? Go ahead and talk back to me. Instead, yeah. And I'm sorry, there's how are they associated? Like with what are they associated? Or the 4 together? Good question. Anything else? Is it the first time? They were caught today, but doesn't mean it's the first time. Good question. 1 or 2 others. Do they have a what? Artistry. That's true. We could redirect. Well, there you go. We'll be positive thoughts. Positive thoughts. They were volunteering during school hours. What can be done? Change the narrative. Love it. So I'm going to ask you guys to keep these questions in your mind. Not for long, just for a couple minutes, okay? So the social, I have some potential questions here, but we went through a lot of them. The social ecological model was created in the 1970s by a psychologist. And in essence, what it's saying is that there's different things that lead to our thoughts, attitudes, and behaviors. So we don't just think the way we think for no reason. There's something that actually influences us, or multiple things. So your thoughts and ideas, your behaviors, maybe even why you have your favorite color, it's influenced by things that happened maybe in your childhood as you're growing up. You just don't have thoughts and ideas for no reason. That's in essence what it's saying. And that there's multiple levels to it. And I'll show this example. But let me take a step back. When I think about my childhood, my father had this weird obsession with Russian dolls. He really liked them. Do you guys know what I'm talking about when I say Russian dolls? The nested dolls. I know maybe not everyone has seen it, but essentially a nested doll, you have a very small doll, and it's within a slightly larger doll. That's within a slightly larger doll, and there's several nestings. This is what the social ecological model is. I'm trying to be mindful of time, so I'm speaking a little quickly. So there's 5 levels. At the center is the individual. The individual is surrounded by interpersonal, which is just the people that are around you. Interpersonal, your friends, your family, your social networks. That is surrounded by the organizations and the schools and workplaces, the institutional level. All that is nested within a community, the cities, the neighborhoods, the resources, the norms of those communities. And all of that is nested within this larger circle of policy. That could be local policy, that could be state policy, that could be federal policy, right? We were just looking at two different definitions. One was the federal definition, one was the North Carolina definition, right? Everything is nested within policy. So all these things influence our thoughts, our attitudes, and behaviors, right? The individual is influenced by their home, their caregivers, their friends, their peers. Those people are influenced by the organizations, the schools, the workplaces around them. It's all sitting within a community, and the communities live and reside within, they're affected by policy. Okay, so let's go back to some of the questions that you had earlier about the 4 young boys that were spray painting the Publix. What were some of the things that you were thinking about at the individual level, about the boys themselves? You had questions about them. Do you remember? Okay, the environment, great. So that would be an influence at the individual level. What other questions about the boys? Artistic interest, yes. Yes, maybe they are artists, aspiring artists. Okay. Sorry? To each other, yes, that's right. That was a good one. Okay. What about their family? What were some of the questions that we had about that? Where are they? Yeah. Maybe they're working, maybe they're out, maybe they're just away. Where are they? What is the family like? Who are they living with? Right? So that family, that interpersonal is affecting the boys. Someone asked, does school even know that they're gone? Right? So what's going on in the school? That's the institutional level. How's that affecting? A lot of times we just look at the behavior, right? But we have to think about at different levels, how's it influencing the behavior, right? And we can go on and on up into policy. She kind of did. So I should have said this at the top. I am very open to questions along the way. This is, let me just pause for a second. Are there any questions about this model? We're going to transition to the second model in a moment. Any questions, any feedback, any rebuttals? You can tell me if you don't like the model. I didn't create it. It's fine. What does it make you think of? What comes to your mind? Was there, did it align with what, was there like an aha moment? Makes you think more about, can I just be Oprah for a second?
To me, it just made me think of it's not just about the individuals, about what's surrounded around them. So you just gave me an idea and I can see like the different aspects. So sometimes you just focus on that one individual, but there are other things that are collaboratively that makes it, you know, a bigger picture. So that was a bigger picture for me.
Yeah, so I love what you just said. I will ground it a little bit more in the fact that oftentimes we create interventions or strategies. Is that what you're?
Just there are different levels to intervene and different approaches, and whether it's, you know, with your individual, with their family, with their school or workplace, their community, or through policy actions, what we're doing here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we could create a strategy that intervenes at the individual level. But what if the problem is with the school? Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to identify at each level what's going on, what's affecting the behavior that we're seeing, so that we correctly create recommendations, strategies that align with what's actually causing the behavior. Any other quick thoughts or reflections? Verbally processing out loud, I'm good with all of it. Mm-hmm. Oh. I love that. I wanted to snap, but I was trying to constrain myself. Yeah, we're different in different environments. Absolutely. Absolutely. That all affects us. Anything else? This side is kind of quiet.
And y'all, I'll remind you when you talk, make sure to hit your thing, Michelle. Since so the folks online can hear your very good comments. Just want to make sure everybody can hear.
Any other thoughts? No?
I think that like all the circles are equal, but I don't think that's how. I don't think all the circles are really proportional in
Oh,
real life.
yeah.
Like, I mean, some of the organizations or workplaces or whatever might be huge impact on the individual.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, I think that kind of goes back to this comment a little bit too, and saying again for those online that depends on the environment, because maybe an environment within an area of New Hanover affects you a little bit more, a little less than if you're in Vance. I don't know, but that's absolutely correct. Any other thoughts, reflections? Go ahead.
I'll just add that we see that with the nonprofit that I lead every day, that we often see, kids that have been in trouble with the law, other things, and we have great experiences with them because we like to think it's because we're offering support, compelling alternatives to what they're doing, but it is very much based on the environment, which I think is a great point. Because those same kids, the very next day at school, acting out, at home, totally different story. So just to reinforce that, I think that's a critical component, because I think people are quick to judge a kid based on what they see in isolation in one environment, rather than considering, do they feel safe where they are? Do they feel supported? Do they feel that people care about them? I think it's important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing that up. It's good.
This model also makes me think of how we need to be conscious of a lot of these things are structural barriers. So looking at how policy is the biggest circle, while also we do have individual, we have to encourage our own standards, but a lot of these things do come from structural barriers, and that we've talked a lot about in our prevention group. So I like how that's kind of nestled in with policy, and the policy is a little bit bigger. So we do have an individual responsibility, but a lot of these things are a resultant of our community and our policy barriers for some people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so, and we're going to go on to the next model, but I welcome any questions if people need to go back. My goal is that, you have an opportunity to really sit with this, wrestle with this, and if it so pleases the task force, be able to apply it, right? So I want to make sure that you feel comfortable and confident in these models. Okay, so we just talked about the social ecological model that we use to identify factors that contribute to a problem or outcome. Now we're going to go on to the public health approach. So there's two main things I want to bring out with this to kind of ground us before we go on. One is that it's systematic. There is an order. There's a step 1, before step 2, for step 3, and step 4. And that it can be used to test strategies before we scale it. That was brought up earlier. So this is where we talk about testing and possibly tailoring as needed. Okay, so public health approach. The public health approach, whether we know it or not, has been used widely across so many different issues. It's well validated. You'll recognize in a moment as I start to bring things out, such as a seatbelt law. We didn't all just start putting seatbelts across our chest and strapping ourselves in. It was tested with a smaller group of people. We made sure this was worth it before we asked our car manufacturers to start installing these and include this in their processes. It was tested. Smoking cessation. Before it was an act, before Senate signed it in, we tested it. We had little sections where we tested clean air. Are we seeing improvements in our community? And then we scaled it up once we saw that it was working. Workplace safety. Before everyone was mandated to put certain posters on the wall and do different things, we had to test it. We saw patterns and issues in our workplaces. We tried to figure out how to solve them. And then when we saw that it was working, we rolled it up. So the public health approach is truly 4 steps. The first one is defining the problem. The second one is identifying factors, and I'll talk a little bit more about risk and protective factors in a moment. The third is developing and testing strategies. And the fourth one is scaling, or ensuring widespread adoption. One thing I do just want to underscore before we go more into defining the problem is that if we are not very clear on what the problem is, we do not know if we found the solution. So it's not a step to rush. We need to be very clear. What is the problem that we are trying to solve? So the problem, when we're defining it, has 5 different components: the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how. So who is doing the behavior? What is happening? When is it happening? Where is it happening? And how is it happening? So let's go back to the scenario that we had earlier. Who is doing the behavior? In that scenario, there were high school boys aged 14 to 15. What is happening? Well, they're spraying or they're tagging buildings, right? When is it happening? Well, they were caught on Monday around 1 p.m. It was said earlier. It might have been that there are other times, but we at least know around midday. Where is it happening? Well, we caught them at a Publix, but there could have been other places too. And how is it happening? Well, they're not in school and they don't have adult supervision. So that's just an example of getting that granular. Not just that we want to stop tagging on buildings, but like, what is the problem? So we can correctly create recommendation strategies to solve the problem. Going on to step 2, identifying the factors. So if you haven't heard of this before, we often categorize factors into either risk or protective factors. So let me give you an example. For all my visual people, imagine it's starting to get warm. That's wonderful. So imagine you are driving around and you see 2 boys on a bicycle, separate bicycles, obviously, and one has a helmet and one does not. If you see the boy with the helmet, you would say that it's probably going to protect them. If something happens, it's going to protect them from possible harm. If you see the boy without the helmet, you think that they're probably at greater risk if something happens. So a risk factor is just anything that increases the likelihood of a bad thing happening. So if there's a sudden break, if a car swings by them, the one without the helmet is more likely to have a harmful effect to maybe their head or something. But the boy with the helmet, you would still be concerned, but a little bit less concerned because there's something protecting them from a negative thing. So there's things in life that are going to increase our risk. I was going to say like eating a lot of French fries, but increase our risk for things or protect us from things, right? So I can't remember if someone said it earlier, but if the boys had access to caregivers, going back to our scenario at the beginning, caregivers that really cared about them, that checked in on them, that knew where they were. Yeah, I'm listening too. That would most likely protect them from being there in that environment. You can map these factors to the social ecological model, right? So in the scenario we talked about earlier, we were only talking about the negative things, why the issue was happening. But if we wanted to create a positive environment, we could also say, okay, well, here are the things that need to happen at the individual level, the family level, the organizational level to create a positive environment. So both, if you're thinking about the SEM, both negative and protective factors could be there. If people need to move, that's okay. I don't. Okay. So when we're thinking about defining the problem, I'm so concerned. They got it? Okay, we're good. I think we need to clap. Thank you for saving us all. I love it. I love the engineering. Yeah.
For those of you online, Dr. Taylor has successfully captured our insect intruder, who will now be taken outside, humanely released to his environment.
I love it. Thank you.
Exactly.
I love it. So when we're talking about defining the problem, right? We're looking at the who, what, where, what, and how. The factors, the risk and protective factors, are the why. That's what rounds us out. So when we're talking about the problem, it's the who, the what, the where, the what, and how. The risk and protective factors are the why. So collectively, step 1 and step 2 give us a rounder picture, a fuller picture of what's going on. Only 2 more steps and I'm out of your way, I promise. So the third step is develop and test prevention strategies. So in this step, we want to know what is working and for who is it working for. So even as you're thinking about recommendations, in this step, if you applied it here, it would be making a recommendation for a smaller group of people, maybe a singular county, seeing if something works before you start to roll it out to the state. That's how you could apply it there if you so choose, right? So I love to give this image. These are mashed potatoes. I love mashed potatoes. But not all mashed potatoes are created equal. They're not. They don't all taste the same. Some are really good, some are not. And if we are having Thanksgiving dinner together, I expect your excellent mashed potatoes to be present before we all come over, right? That's not the time, Thanksgiving, to me, to test out new recipes. I want to know that the tried and true is there. People have eaten it before, they're still alive, and we can all have Thanksgiving meal together, right? So in the same way, before we roll out things to a wider group, let's test it, make sure it works, it's edible, it works for people, and then roll it out. So this is my last slide, and I'll open up if there's questions. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I'm good? Okay. So as we're rolling things out to a wider group, we want to make sure that we're disseminating information to everyone, that we're not doing this in secret isolation. Granted, that's not so relevant to this group. It's a statewide task force, but that we are truly being transparent and rolling things out to a larger audience and informing people of what is happening. And as we're implementing the strategy with a larger group of audience, that we're also giving space to tailor as necessary, recognizing that Wake versus New Hanover versus Vance versus Franklin are all different, right? So with that, I will close and see if there's any questions. Maybe we're all thinking about mashed potatoes now, I don't know. But I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Young. I don't have a question, but I do think that you raise a great point that as we're thinking about our strategies for each of our 3 working groups, we should also think about pilot locations for those strategies, right? And we should diversify the pilot locations so that we have, we're tapping into each of those types of environments and seeing what works there and seeing then how we can make that scalable to other like counties, to other like environments. So I think that's a really great point. Other thoughts or questions for Dr. Young? Okay. That was, I really cannot say enough about it. Is 10:10 and y'all are really all right back here. I don't think I have ever been on a commission or task force that is so prompt. So thank you all very much. It could have to do with, well, I was going to say good weather, but maybe it's not good weather. Nobody wants to get outside in the pollen. Okay, so the next thing that we are going to do is have a series of presentations from my department, the Department of Adult Correction, to talk about some of the gang initiatives that we have in the department, some of the things that we have been doing in the department for many years. And so the folks who have been doing those things for many years are here to talk to you today. So first will be Steve Jones. Steve is here with us. He's a psychologist with our prisons and has been with us since 1995 and was part of the team that created our Security Threat Group Management Unit in 2005, which is now our SRG program, and has worked in gang interventions over the past 30 years in different ways, is also part of our emergency response teams, is a professor. And so Steve has been working on this issue for a very long time and is going to talk to us about our GEAR program, which is our gang education and renunciation program. So take it away, Steve.
Good morning, folks. Can you hear me okay in the back? All right. I would love not to use the microphone, but I know they need to record, so we'll use it. So I'm going to try and balance a clicker and a microphone, and chaos may be the result. We'll do the best we can. My name's Steve Jones. I'm a psychologist at Foothills Correctional Institution, which is the home of what is now the Gang Education and Renunciation Program. I'm going to spend some time talking with you about the development of and operation of that program over 20 years, except most of what I'm going to tell you about will not be that program because by name it's only been in existence for the past year. The previous 20, same program, different name. So we'll talk a whole lot about that, and we'll talk a little bit about the transition because the transition's driven by a major policy change in the last year that revised for the first time in 20 years how we approach a lot of things in management of gang members in our prison system. So that said, let's get rolling. And I'm going to do the worst thing you can do in a PowerPoint. I'm actually going to read you one slide. And that's because I really like this slide. I wrote this a long time ago. It summarizes things nicely. So I'll kind of paraphrase. Back in 1996, and this is about the time I started with the agency, the North Carolina Division of Prisons established a system for validating and monitoring offender security risk groups, SRGs. That's gangs in prison. Over the next 7 years, the number of groups, the number of offenders associated with them, and their negative impact on the system grew. As part of an effort to reverse this trend, the Division of Prisons proposed and implemented a Security Threat Group Management Unit, which became operational in 2005. Over 20 years, the STIGMU graduated nearly 2,200 offenders. Under our North Carolina Department of Adult Correction in 2025, we completed a year-plus long major gang policy revision, transformed the STIGMU into the GEAR program, and that's where we are today. So we've been at this for a little while. In terms of the things that will occupy you is this committee, and I say that with a little bit of background. The last time I talked to a governor's task force on gangs was in 2012, and I've lost track of how many administrations ago that would be. So the work continues, obviously. When we talk about things in prison, it's going to be a little bit different from what you'll normally deal with because you're primarily concerned with things in the community, in the schools, law enforcement. Where you contact our agency primarily will be through supervised release, through our community corrections folks. When we talk about things like prevention, we talk about keeping kids out of gangs. By the time they make it to us, most of that ship has sailed. So our task is a little bit different from what will consume most of your time, I suspect. But it's worth talking about because there's some good overlap. So let me tell you real quickly, I don't know what folks' backgrounds were in terms of understanding how we identify gang members in prison. So I'm going to touch on it very briefly, and then my colleague's going to expand on some of that as he comes up next. In general, the way that we talk about gangs in the prison, we refer to them now as security risk groups. Prior to that, it was security threat groups. Not real sure exactly what the difference is, but we change things periodically. What we look for is an offender comes into the system, we evaluate whether they meet specific criteria. Jason's going to talk about what those criteria are, but they're objective criteria based on behavior, based on characteristics that we can clearly identify that with enough of these characteristics in place, we can reasonably call this person a gang member. Once we have identified them as a gang member, then we look at leveling them based on severity in terms of risk to our system. And we do that based on a couple of key criteria, our actual core criteria. The 4 that we've always used were documentation that the individual is a gang leader, documentation that they've participated in gang activities, either in the community or in the prison system, specific disciplinary offenses within the prison system. This has evolved over time. Primarily, this is what we consider A-class offense. This is our highest level offenses involving assaultive offenses, things that create risk to folks specifically. And then evidence that the individual committed a gang-related crime. So when someone is validated as a gang member in our system, we assign a level of risk to them based on the presence or absence of those criteria. The highest level